people of South Africa expected to accept that fraudsters, corruption accused and Zondo accused are protected while Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield is removed?
Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in central Pennsylvania. The drama unfolding in South Africa after the sacking of Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry Andrew Whitfield is interesting, to say the least. The president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, issued a statement today, rather unusual, about the firing and his basis for it. Now, far be it from me to protect or defend President Palapala, the man who had $580,000 of cash supposedly illicitly stuffed in his furniture at his Palapala game ranch for cattle that were never delivered, still sit there on the farm for a suspect Sudanese businessman, and the questions about currency violations and money laundering and all those other things. So far be it for me to protect President Ramaphosa, the man who continually insults President Trump at every opportunity, lies to him. However, his statement does ring a lot of truth. The decision by John Steenhuisen of the Democratic Alliance to stake his political future on issuing an ultimatum that the president should sack corruption-accused members of the cabinet is probably not going to bear any fruit. I don't think the DA is actually willing to leave the GNU, the Government of National Unity, and it has no impact. We see very clearly from the actions of President Ramaphosa over the past year of the GNU that the DA has zero influence on changing his position or moving the needle on any issue, whether expropriation without compensation, the National Health Insurance Initiative, the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, or the 3% black tax, or now the labor imposition, the racism that's being put into the labor market, forcing companies to not hire more than 4% of their managers who are white. Clear racism, clear violation of the Constitution. It's obvious that the DA has no influence on Ramaphosa, and this statement makes it very clear too. And I quote, "Given all the circumstances, there is consequently no reasonable grounds for Mr. Steenhuisen and the Democratic Alliance to issue ultimatums and threats when the president exercises constitutional prerogative and responsibility. Nor are there any grounds to try to link this with matters that have no bearing on the conduct of the former deputy minister." Well, he's correct in his statement there, and the ultimatum is not a wise move by the DA, but I don't agree that it has nothing to do with any other actions. I also, like John Steenhuisen, strongly believe this has an awful lot to do with the fact that Whitfield has been sniffing around at corruption that's taking place, and with Paul Mashatili's name being mentioned in the Lotto scandal, whether he's involved or not, it really isn't germane, but his name being mentioned, suddenly Whitfield is sacked.
He had opposed the attempt to make suspect appointments to the IDC board. He was raising uncomfortable questions about the Transformation Fund and the opportunities it provides for looting. And yes, he was asking the uncomfortable questions about the Lotto tender award.
Whitfield went to America a few months ago, and Ramaphosa makes it as if this is something that he made a decision on based on that action. Well, it's been months ago. Why now? Ramaphosa continues, "There is really no basis for suggestions that the dismissal of the former deputy minister is related to any other reason other than his failure to receive permission to travel and adhere to the rules and established practices expected of members of the executive of the Republic of South Africa, except that the trip was months ago. Why wasn't he sacked then?" Ramaphosa continues, "I'm amazed at Mr. Steenhuisen's intemperate reaction to the removal of Mr. Whitfield. He knows very well that the blatant disregard of the rules and practices that govern international travel of members of the executive is a serious violation that should not be permitted." He also says it's unprecedented in the history of our democracy that the exercise by the president of his constitutional prerogative and responsibility with respect to a clear violation of rules and established practices governing the conduct of members of the executive has met with such irresponsible and unjustifiable threats and ultimatums from a member of the executive. Now there's a clear fire shot across the bow of John Steenhuisen. And in the end, Ramaphosa says, "Let it be clear that the president shall not yield to threats and ultimatums, especially coming from members of the executive that he has the prerogative to appoint in accordance with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa." And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Cyril Ramaphosa has told John Steenhuisen to shut his cake hole, or he will be sacked as well. So there's the threat from President Ramaphosa, but he's in a position to make such a threat. Steenhuisen works for him. And again, this comes back to the point I've made all along about this whole situation, ladies and gentlemen. John Steenhuisen is in an untenable position. he should not have become a member of the cabinet while remaining the leader of the Democratic Alliance. It just doesn't work. You can't satisfy your constituents and the voters and represent the Republic while you're also representing the president. Cyril Ramaphosa's agenda is clearly different than the Democratic Alliance. That doesn't mean the two parties can't be in a coalition together. But what it does mean is that when you accept a cabinet position, you shouldn't be leading a political party. This was a challenge for the Freedom Front Plus, and Dr. Groenewald stepped aside, and now Corné Mulder leads that party. And Groenewald remains a minister and a member of the cabinet. Well, Cyril Ramaphosa has fired big rounds, pulled out the G5, G6, and fired these rounds. What will John Steenhuisen's response be? I suspect it will be muted. Perhaps he realizes that he staked his political future. Did he do it foolishly? Was he just in doing it? I don't know the answer. Do you?
Serial underperformers and people implicated in state capture continue to sit around the cabinet table.
What I do know is that Cyril Ramaphosa obviously is bothered by what Steenhuisen had to say. So much so that he had to issue a statement about it. What say you, South Africa? South Africa, Mzansi? Interesting, isn't it? Cheers.